speakers tonight, Mark Woolley and Chris Haberman grew up in Milwaukee and are now regionally and nationally known artists, curators, activists, and much, much more, which you'll hear about in a minute. They're going to respond to a series of questions that the Arts Committee put together. And the first one is going to ask them about themselves, so I'm not going to go on and on introducing them. But I will just say that we're very grateful that they're here. I'm sure many of you are here because you know of their career and their work and are here specifically to hear them speak. And we will have time at the end for questions and answers, so please give them a warm welcome. So I just have to get my cheat sheet out.
I memorized it, so I think we're right.
Yeah.
All right, so our first question is, tell us about a bit, so sorry, it's a multi-part question, I hate those. What is your connection to Milwaukee? What has been your career path? How you got into art? How you approach making art and your artistic style? In other words, just tell us about yourself in like 3 minutes.
Go ahead, you start.
The rest aren't multi-part, I promise.
That is a big question. Okay, I was born in Medford, Oregon. My parents were both from Montana. My dad was a career Fish and Wildlife Service biologist. My mother was a home economics teacher in Montana, and she, for a long time, at Clackamas High School. When I went to Milwaukie High School, where I graduated in 1970, which is about the time Chris was born, my mom was substitute teaching at Milwaukie High. So it was interesting for me to go into a class when I had no idea if she had been called to the school that day, and I'd walk in, there's my mother, and at the front of the classroom. So it's just interesting having your parent be a surprise substitute teacher when people aren't normally on their necessarily best behavior. But I always was. So anyway, I went to kindergarten, first and second grade in Missoula, Montana, and then we moved back here. And I went to South Wyoming, and I went to Milwaukie Junior High School.
So did I.
Yeah, and Milwaukie High School. So at Milwaukie, I was involved in pretty much everything. I was a student body officer, I was a pony piper, I was in the plays. I was blah, blah, blah. So my two sisters, Susan Woolley and Laura Woolley, also went to Milwaukie. So basically, I had a strong interest in social studies. I ended up actually becoming a social studies teacher for 15 years, and I worked in law-related education for 6 years. And as to how I got into art, well, anyways, after graduating in 1970, I just went right across the river to Lewis and Clark College, where I got my degree. I got my BA, and I got my master's, and I got my principal's certificate, even though I never used it. The way I kind of got into art, my family wasn't a big art family. Our vacations, we would go to the national parks. We go to all the national parks and all the historical museums, and I don't think my parents ever took me to an art museum. Although my mother had a keen eye for design, and I think that's kind of where I picked up my interest in design. So basically, when I went to Lewis and Clark, I majored in political science, and I hadn't thought seriously about art. I took a calligraphy class at Lewis and Clark by Norm Pache, who was studying with Lloyd Reynolds, who's really well known as a master calligrapher. And one term I was trying to get into, I think, a tennis class, and it was full, and I'm walking out of the arena scheduling in the gym at Lewis and Clark. And the gentleman at the last table was Ken Shores, who's still living, who's a well-known ceramicist in town and taught art at Lewis and Clark for many years. And as I'm walking out of the arena scheduling, he said, so I can tell you didn't get something that you wanted to get and sign up for. And I said, yeah, I was trying to get into tennis. He goes, you should sign up for my sculpture course. And I'm like, oh my God, I don't know if I can do that. And, but he was just so nice, and I needed another credit, I guess. So I signed up for that class. And that's where I met my wife, who we're still married, 37 years. I met her in Ken's class, and he had an end of the term, sort of a a little gathering at his home up near the Vista Bridge in Portland, and his home was just completely filled with art. Every little square inch in his bathroom, and I'd never been in a home that was just filled to the brim with art. And it kind of opened my eyes. And then because I married a painter, I started being around more artists. And in terms of how I became a gallerist, that was pretty much by accident. I taught school down in Scioto, Oregon, a town of 500 people down in the Willamette Valley, for 12 years, and then I taught for a year at Riverdale School in Dunthorpe for a guy that was on sabbatical. And I taught in Gladstone at Cracksburger for a year, and then I taught in West Lynn for a year, and then I was completely burned out. I just could not teach junior high one more day. And but I put in my 15 years, thank God. I was in the PERS system for half a career. And so anyway, my wife, when we moved from Scioto, we moved to West Lynn, and so both of our kids went to West Lynn High School. But my wife was painting out of our home, and I just felt for her sake she needed to get out of the house and try to be in a community of artists. And so as a birthday present for her, I started looking in Portland for a studio situation, and I found this group of women artists. They called themselves artMOB. There was about a dozen artists, all painters, weavers, all kinds of people, and they had a slot. So for her birthday, I set up her studio down in this warehouse in the Pearl, and took her down there, and she had no idea what was going on. And I took her in there, and her drafting table was set up, and she was speechless. And anyway, so that was in the Pearl District before the Pearl District was an arts district. And then they lost their lease, and they ended up in another building. Anyway, her studio mate left, and I said, I think I want to, at that time I was working for Oregon Law Related Education program doing mock trial stuff. And I basically said, when her studio mate Rosie Biscar, I don't know if any of you know Rosie, left, I said, I think I want to rent half your space. And she's like, why? Because I wasn't making art myself at that time. And I said, I think I want to have some artists work in there and, rep some artists. And she was like, why? And I'm like, I don't know, I just feel like I want to do that. So one thing led to another, and I ended up, for 2 years, we were only open 2 days a week. I was working full-time at my nonprofit job, and then my wife would work Friday, and I'd work Saturday in my little gallery. There was an upstairs space. No other gallery in town had an upstairs space at that time. And one thing led to another, and so when I lost my job due to funding, I just decided to do the gallery thing more full-time. So this December will be 20 years that I've been involved in doing my own gallery. So when I first started my gallery, I didn't have the confidence to put my name on it because I had no idea what I was doing. I didn't have a partner or a backer or any artist other than my wife. And so I called it a canvas because I always liked classical architecture, and the acanthus leaf is on the Corinthian column. Plus it would put me #1 in the arts listings with AC, which I didn't realize. So after 2 years of a campus gallery, people couldn't remember it, they didn't know how to say it, they thought we were saying a campus gallery. And my arts attorney, who I incorporated my business through, said, you should just put your name on it. And I'm like, really? He goes, yeah, put your name on it. And it was the best, it was really the best thing because everybody wants to talk to the owner or the dealer. And then my name was on the business, people knew who to ask for, and I started selling more art almost immediately, and everybody wanted to talk to Mark Woolley. And so I guess over the years, if you stay doing what you're doing long enough, and you have your name on it, for better or for worse, I guess you kind of become your own brand or whatever, and that's kind of what happened with me. So,
For sure.
I took up way too much time. Are you going to tell us where you were born and everything?
I have like 3 sentences. Go ahead.
No, and then how I got together with Chris, you can tell that part of the story.
Oh, it's okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Well, no, you
I sure are.
yeah.
I was born in Portland, but I grew up in Milwaukie, of course. Someone in my family has graduated from Milwaukie High School since 1950, so every decade. So my mom, my dad, they all grew up in Oak Grove. So I'm definitely from here. I went to Dairy Queen and Mike's Drive-In and everything. I even worked at Dark Horse Comics and I was fired. Everyone's been fired from Dark Horse. Anyway, I was born in 1973, so just Mark and I are definitely a generation apart. I went to Milwaukie High School, of course, and I did take some drawing classes. I never wanted to be an artist. I always thought art was cool, but I loved comic books. I remember going to Milwaukie Junior High and running down to the comic book shop to get Boris the Bear from Dark Horse Comics when I was in junior high, and put it in my back pocket, getting on the bus. I loved art and comics. And my family owned a salon on 42nd King up in Milwaukie by Burrito Express. So I grew up there. The bus dropped me off there from age 7 to until I went to college and actually could drive. I also went to Suffolk Woolley, went to Milwaukie Junior High. I've always loved art, but I worked on the newspaper at Milwaukie. I was really planning to be a journalist, which is, I barely graduated from Milwaukie High School, so that was a nice thing that I did graduate. And I went to,
I just remembered I went to Hector Campbell. Not
Oh, yeah.
We lived by Suffolk Woolley, but I went to Hector Campbell, just for the record.
But I loved growing up in Milwaukie. It was great. It wasn't exactly as art focused as it is now, which is totally awesome. But I was really lucky to grow up with my mother, who loved art. She basically just let me do anything I wanted. I mean, she bought me any toy that was at the thrift store, and I could draw something. And I've always drawn, but I never planned on doing art ever. But I ended up going to Black Community College, where again I went towards journalism. I was editor of the paper there. I was editor in Milwaukie too as well. Then I ended up going to PSU. My grades were much better in college. I didn't have to deal with everything from the high school standard. But I tried to take a painting class right when I got into Portland State, and they were all full. So I ended up getting my bachelor's degree. I was editor of the Vanguard there forever. I was a writer. I'm definitely a trained writer. I then went into get my master's. I was sitting at, in the graduation ceremony, and everyone's getting their master's ahead of me, and I'm just like, that's it, I'm going in the fall, I'm going to get my master's. This is, those are the people that really are getting an education. So I ended up going to get my master's at PSU, and my very last term of my graduate studies, there's one class I had left to take, and I walked into, finally, as a master's student, I could get into a painting class. So I took a painting class my very last term of school, and I had Margaret Shirley, she was a New York artist from the abstract school, and I got into her class, and I basically have one class left, so she's like, you should take all these classes, so I started taking, in one term, I just sat in all these classes, because I could sit in there and then walk out. It was really great. Like, I don't like printmaking, I can't do ceramics, but painting was really good, and I took basic design, and Margaret Shirley, I got really pissed off one day when I was painting, and I threw the easel down and walked out of class because I didn't need the credit. I came back the next day and she's like, "You should paint. You're a natural painter. You should really start to paint." So that was 2000 that I graduated. So I did start to paint, and she was really supportive of me. So I just continued to paint, and I got into an apartment. I decided that I was going to get a corporate job because that's the only way I could be an artist. At that point, I didn't want to teach. I did work at Dark Horse for a little while. I went to New York for a bit and worked at Nickelodeon. Again, doing production stuff, managing staff stuff, because that's what I was used to in the newspapers. And I did work as a writer for a year. I bounced around those after college jobs, but I always wanted to paint. I loved artists, and my education was I have a master's in American literature, from 1865 to the present, which I've never taught that. I've just taught ESL and all these other crappy classes that someone with no teaching experience has to do. But they were really great, but it wasn't as passionate as I was really about creative writing and painting. And I felt like there was some connection between the two. So I hold myself up in this insurance job downtown. I went to a temp agency. I couldn't find a job as a writer, so went to a temp agency, and they said, "Wow, you can type 130 words a minute, and you have a master's degree. What are you doing here?" I'm like, "Well, I need a job really bad, and I want to be an artist. And so I'm going to get a job, and I'm going to learn how to paint in my crappy apartment, and I'm going to, leave my corporate job every day, and I'm going to go home, and I'm just going to paint." So I went to so I went to the interview for the place. It was great. And the guy's like, so this is a title insurance company. Like, what do you know about insurance? And I said, well, Kafka sold insurance. So that was it. He laughed and hired me. So I got a job there, and I was never actually a temp. He like bought my contract out, and I worked there for, I think I worked there for 6 years or something. But one day, I couldn't really find a place to show my art. Like, I'd been painting on cardboard and stuff I'd find, and I learned how to stretch canvas and all that, but it got too expensive, so I just started like picking up wood, and I sold some construction signs off the road, and I would paint them at night, and in the morning I put them back, so you could still read the road construction ahead, but my painting was covered the entire thing, and I put it back. I never did graffiti or anything, but that was kind of graffiti. But so I just started holding up all these paintings, and I couldn't find a place to show, and I still had my job, and I was working a lot, and basically my friend was showing at the Limelight in Selwood, and he said, you can have a show in here, like they needed artists, you know. So I brought all my stuff in there, and he let me hang through the whole place, and I had a little party, and then I went back like 2 weeks later to get my work, and it was all gone. And he said, I was like, oh my God, I sold everything. He's like, yeah, it's totally great. Like, do you have more? And I was like, yeah, a lot more. So 14 months went by. I was the only artist in that whole place. And I sold like 208 paintings through him. So the Limelight and Selwood, if they wouldn't give me a show, I don't know if I would have become an artist. But after that, I just started showing as much as I could and working. And then one day, my wife, Teresa, I called her and I said, I got to walk out of this job. Like, I'm selling art and everything's going well, and so walked into my boss's office and quit. So that was almost, was that 6 years ago? So 6 years I've just been a full-time artist, and I became a curator, which is weird for an artist to become a curator, but it felt like a natural thing. Like that same Limelight was like, I got done with my stint, they're like, we're gonna let other people show art, and I'm like, that's great. They're like, do you know anyone? I'm like, sure, I have artist friends, and then, you know, I'd show somewhere else, and they're like, we need more artists. I'm like, I know artists, and you know. So I met Mark Woolley in the 90s, actually. I went and bought a piece of art from Mark Woolley Gallery. And I was really, yeah, you don't remember.
I usually remember everybody that buys something.
Yeah, well, you were too busy talking to people. I was actually really impressed that Mark really took a chance on some artists that weren't exactly mainstream, but he was such a huge name as a curator. I mean, like the top 5 art dealers in Portland, Mark Woolley was always one of them. But he took a chance, he did. He always took a chance on someone, like you always give someone a break. It always meant a lot to me. So I did meet you then. But our galleries now are next door to each other inside of Pioneer Place Mall. So we've been there, I've been there since 2010. We've been there
A year and a half.
Right, he was about to retire from curating, but he decided to come back, which is great, because he wasn't about, there was no way he was going to quit. My artistic style is basically the same way I drew when I was 7, I think. So nothing's really changed. Just try to, Picasso always said, paint like a child, so I'm just trying to, you know, just paint what comes out of me. I really don't try too hard to figure out what I want to do, but I try to have a childish but adult theme and kind of work my style. You know, I just want it to be fun. I think art's really fun. Since the Limelight, that crucial moment where someone did give me a chance, which is why I always give someone a chance. Since then, as of this last December, I sold my 10,000th painting as an artist. So, like, it's definitely, and I mean, I've given it away too, and I donate, and I do everything I can, because you don't want that stuff around your house forever. I mean, I just get it out, and I'm really appreciative to everyone that's ever bought art from me. You know, that's what art is.
All right, this question isn't actually on the list, and you don't actually have to answer it. But do you credit art with looking so freaking young? Both of you. It's great. Okay, so the next. So the next question is, how did you make the transition into the art world full time? You kind of both touched on it, but.
Yeah, kind of losing my job and deciding if I really wanted to go for it. And having a space. The month I lost my job, the space next to where I'd been already operating my gallery for 2 years became available. So I leased that, I cut a hole through the walls, which doubled the size of my gallery. I put my name on it. I decided I had to get serious about it. I mean, for many years, I was the one that had the job and the benefits. And then I think my wife was a little shocked when I'm like going into the art world, and I was doing some painting, and I got a couple of gallery shows myself, but I kind of stopped painting because I realized I was better at selling art than making it. I just had to make that, I felt I had to make that choice. I do miss making art. My art was kind of crazy day glow beat portrait kind of stuff, which I had fun with, but since I was working, the only time I could paint was at night, so I would just stay up. I'm pretty high energy, so I would just stay up pretty much all night painting, and then I'd go to my job, and then the next day I'd rest. But I guess it just, with me, it kind of, the thing I didn't talk about, what kind of got me into being an art dealer was collecting art, and people have this notion that to collect art you have to have a lot of money, and in Portland that's just totally not true. When I had my teaching job, I would go around to 2 or 3 or 4 galleries with $25 a month or my $50 a month payment, and it may take me a year or a year and a half to pay off a piece, but every gallery I know in Portland, even the oldest ones, they take payments, and that's how most of the art in my house now is when I actually have a job.
How many pieces do you have in your house?
I don't know. I have art storage. People have given me stuff. People have left art in my gallery and moved away.
That's the most fun.
I still have a collecting bug. I mean, you look at people that, I think anybody, you don't even have to have a job to be a collector. I've had literally people that were homeless, living in their cars, that were buying a piece of art, that would come in with their $10, and they're as much of a collector as anybody else. So that's one thing I'd like to get out there, is that, you know, in this town, you can move into this town with $2,000, and if you're selective and you find what you like and you make some payments, you can end up with a nice little collection. And so anyway, collecting kind of got me into art, and if I had more money now, I would still be buying more art.
I think my transition was pretty slow, really. I mean, I just kind of cut off the umbilical cord of the job at one point, but I was trying to, it was always, it's frightening to leave, you know, like still to this day, I have no idea how we're going to pay rent. I mean, every month, but it always happens, like, and if I need it, and I mean, people have always supported me, which I love, and that's been a great thing. It's just been better and better, and I'm very appreciative of that. But
I guess both of our wives now have good jobs, right?
yeah, for sure.
That's the dirty little
This is
secret.
Teresa, she gives me health insurance.
My wife still has a job with insurance, yeah.
Yeah, so I think a teammate really helps out with everything, but basically I just got ready for it, and when it finally happened, I treated it like a job, as I do every day. It's a job. It's not, you know, I don't get drunk at the bar every night. Like I work banker hours. Like I'm asleep at 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock at night. I mean, when I don't have to stay up for 3 days in the car. But I think that's you know, that was the biggest, you know, it's hard to go full time. I mean, everyone wants to be an artist. That's a great thing to do, but it's, you know, there's no days off, like you do everything all the time. Like all artists are frankly trying to make if you can hustle, that's what it's all about. I mean, that's really, I don't say no to anything, and I don't, you know, I just don't really stop. I mean, I just create all the time. I could probably make better work if I spend time on it, but I'm trying to sell it. Like I'm trying to make a living at it. And so, you know, I just make what comes out of me naturally. And, you know, I think it's hindered me, but it's also been a good thing. I mean, I believe in the community, and I have a lot of opinions about everything, and I probably could have went full gallery road and done all of that, but I've just been kind of you know, I think about my mom. My mom loved art. She loved everything, culture. She loved TV. You know, she loved movies. I just think my mom was, you know, kind of she was an intelligent woman, but very simple. So I think I've always looked at, you know, just to try to not let my education or anything else ascend too high. Like, I'm a blue-collar guy, you know, I'm from this blue-collar town, you know, so I try to keep my art simple. And some of my best collectors, you know, are construction workers, and I have a plumber but I have doctors too. I mean, I think with my gallery too, it's been always, you know, that's what we try to do, I'm trying to help people make transition too. Our long answers are insane.
This is fantastic.
Yeah.
So you sort of touched on it. The next question was, what is the hardest part about doing art full time? I guess you sort of answered that a little bit. But.
Yeah, I mean, since I'm not actively making art, my business has done more. It's full time. It's like it's a baby that you have to feed, you know. And if you're in a lease, you have to. What happened with me is I sold more and more art. I had more and more people working for me part time. They would get paid. I was their rent check, but I didn't often get paid because you pay all the bills first. Anybody that's been involved in a small business knows what I'm talking about. I feel good about providing those people with some income for working in the gallery. But when I closed my gallery down, so I was in the Pearl 16 years, and then I got involved in the Wonder Ballroom project over on Northeast Russell Street, and which I'm still nominally involved in. But I had a gallery. I moved out of the Pearl, and I moved into for 2 years. I was doing 2 gallery spaces, which I would not recommend that to anyone. People that are doing maybe 1 restaurant or 1 gallery and it's going fine, and you think, oh, I'll just do another one. It's the biggest mistake I think anyone can make. So that 2 years was really, really hard. I was doing, in 1 gallery, I do Wednesday, Thursday night openings. In my other gallery, I was doing Friday and Saturday night openings, and I do that every single month. And so that was untenable. So then I moved out of the Pearl. I was just at Wonder, but I wasn't getting the traffic I needed because it's not a gallery area over there. Now it's Restaurant Row. There's Russell Street Barbecue and Toro Bravo and Secret Society. And
you were the first. You were the first person.
We kind of colonized that street and that neighborhood, the Elliott neighborhood. The Wonder Ballroom became a tipping point of that neighborhood. Some people didn't like the fact this club was opening up in, I don't know if you've been there, but it's an 800 person venue. There's a restaurant, and then what used to be my gallery is now a bar. But then I moved downtown on Southwest 2nd next to Ogden Gallery, and I was there 2 years. And that's in the fall of '08 when the economy went down the toilet, and I already wasn't making money, and then it got really hard because people were not buying art. And that's when I just said, you know, I don't have to prove anything to anybody. I can't do this anymore. And but of course that wasn't the right answer either. So I closed that, and then I did pop-up shows for about 3 years, and I do maybe 4 to 6 shows a year in other people's spaces. And then Chris and I co-applied for a creative director position that luckily it was down to us and the woman they hired. And the woman they hired didn't last very long.
It was from Milwaukie 5 on 82nd.
From Milwaukie 5, the Arts Committee on 82nd. So in a way, I think things happen for a reason. There was a reason we did not get that job, and we've been able to focus on our current galleries downtown. So now I'm back to doing close to a full-time gallery.
Which is great.
Thanks, Chris.
Yeah, well, it's great to work with you,
Yeah.
honestly. I mean, like...
But I still have fun with it, and I'm trying to run more on Chris's model of staffing it with artist volunteers who are happy to sit in there. They could be on their Facebook, I don't care. You know, working in a gallery isn't like, you know, working in the coal mines, and there's always people that want to work in there. And so I'm trying to operate now on volunteer staff, some more 2-month shows, maybe less art cards. I'm just trying to think a little smarter, like Chris always says about money. I would keep pulling on my credit card, and that's not good advice for anyone.
I don't have a credit card, so that's pretty nice to... basically
I have a party when I don't have one.
All the art here, by the way, is it's all from my gallery, but Mark and I are doing a lot of art sharing too. So, like, most of these people are, I don't know if you can see everything. It's funny because these are the walls, the exact walls I have in my gallery, and I have like 7,000 clips, but I didn't bring one. So otherwise, we could have hung this whole place as a little show. But anyway, so I think, and what was I going to say next? So what are we on here?
The hardest thing.
Yeah, I think money is really the hardest part. Knowing where your next paycheck is going to come is super brutal. I think also, like, kind of figuring your audience out. I mean, you don't want to change your art too much, but, like, it sounds weird, but I had the benefit of hanging at a bar for a year where people just gave me constant feedback. Like, I really like this, I like this. And I just kind of, I had no problem changing my art, but that doesn't mean other people should. I think you need to figure out what you're most passionate about, and I think people can figure that out, and people will see that you're passionate about that. But you also have to figure out, like, I mean, I make some, like, this is my art right here. this is Ursula Le Guin. Like, I have a story behind my art, which I can't paint hands, so I don't usually paint hands, but I don't have to. They're hard. But, like, I have a story behind my art, and it's all recycled. Like, this is just a piece of wood I found, right? So, pretty simple. I find the stuff, and then I cut it up, and I use recycled paint, and, you know, it's cheap. This is a $40 painting. It's not very much money for art. But I think that the story behind it is that's my kicker, right? I mean, marketing is important. All the stuff that applies to business applies to art. You have to be your own salesman. You have to be, I mean, that's the hardest part of being a full-time artist. Is like, you wake up in the morning, you're like, what the hell am I going to do? I can make art all day long. I can make 20 pieces in a day and have a show, and I may not sell a thing. Like, that's the hardest thing in the world. You've made all this stuff, but you just keep doing that. And I think that all the deadlines that I've set for myself over the time, it made me a better artist. It made me a quicker artist. I never said no to things. I was in every group show. I always did everything. I was easy for curators. I hung at US Bank and I got kicked out. I had a painting, the guy with the t-shirt that said, Mass Age the Rapist, which basically is spelled out massage therapist. Mass Age the Rapist, massage therapist. But US Bank said, it says rapist on there, so you can't hang that in the bank. I was like, it's therapist, it's the rapist. But, so they kicked me out of US Bank, which is awesome. But then I took all my stuff over to the wine bar across the street and we sold a couple paintings. And I think I won money on video poker. So everything was really meant to happen that night. I think I just keep working at it, you know, and I think don't give up, like, be original. You know, these are the things that matter. Like, don't charge too much. Like, what's the economy at? Like, this is all, there's so many important things about business that, the time of agents, and I really feel like the time of galleries is, I don't know where they're at. I mean, Mark and I, we have different type of galleries now, I think, that we have very accessible stuff. I mean, Mark has higher brow clients than I usually have, but, I like people to buy art with the money they have in their pocket. I mean, there's an entire untapped, un-elitist class of people that like art in Portland, and we live in a place where restaurants are galleries. Like, it's an amazing thing for people to take advantage of. Seattle has nothing that we have here. There aren't restaurants where people can hang out. Like, it's still a respectable thing. Restaurants have curators. Like, that doesn't happen in any other town. What's that? I've never been to Chicago.
So how do you, actually, Ursula Le Guin spoke in Milwaukee last year, did you know that?
Oh yeah,
She
no,
was
she babysat me when I was a
Oh,
kid.
that was awesome.
She was absolutely phenomenal.
She's amazing.
Yeah, so how do you reach new audiences with your work, and how do you turn those new fans into paying customers?
I would say, again, since get some wine. No. That can cut both ways. It's expensive. I mean, to have wine and food at the openings, I think, is important. But it's spending. And Chris has all kinds of great ideas of getting sponsors and a wine sponsor, beer sponsor, whatever. But my view is you just build whatever your business is, you build it one client at a time, and you keep them happy, and you give them what they want, and you try to, with art, like, I started working with designers, interior designers, and so I had a good relationship with maybe 8 designers. So when they were working on a project and they needed art, and they knew that they could come to my place, like a store, and I would take every last bit of art out of the back room and show them, and I would take it on site and I would put it up, and I would do all that for nothing. I got clients that way through working, collaboratively working with designers. And again, just my gallery's always been very non-elitist. I feel like galleries shouldn't be, even at the mall, I would say especially at the mall, people walk by the door and they kind of look in and they're like, it doesn't look like a juicy couture boutique,
Some of the dry cleans are there.
Whatever. So I've always thought, you can't judge who's going to be a buyer, or you can't be elitist at all. Anyone can buy art. Anyone can come in. I don't care if they're homeless. As long as they're well behaved, you know, they have every right to be in that gallery. That's what I think a lot of people don't realize is galleries are providing a free. I had people come to my gallery for 18 years, drink the wine, ooh and ah about the art, and never buy one thing. But they have that right. You know, but there might be people that come in for 15 years and then one day they see something that they really want or they need or they got a little money or whatever. So it's just, I think it's building, you know, it's building up your clientele one person at a time and giving them what they like and helping them determine what they might like that they don't even know they might like it. So
I totally agree. I think that I've been a bar artist, which has been easy because there's a lot of bars to show in, so I just continue to find new bars. But I mean, I've shown in the 7-Eleven store. Like I've shown, it's the weirdest place I've ever shown.
where?
I've shown on this 7-Eleven, like inside of a convenience store. Which is great.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I've shown in the church. I think of the weirdest places I've ever shown.
Wasn't it Dogford?
What's that?
Dogford?
Oh yeah, I showed at the pet store. That was pretty fun. Like I did all dog art. Like it was a challenge. I mean, when people are, you know, like when people say that I'm bored, how can you be bored? There's so much going on. You can't even keep up with it every day. I mean, the internet and everything else. Or if people say, I don't know what to paint or I don't know what to create. I mean, there's so much subject matter. There's not any. I mean, our world is so full. I think that my clients have been, my first clients are my friends, my family, which is great. That's your first thing. You build confidence as an artist to get that. Then hopefully you got a lot of cousins, and then your cousins have friends, and they have cousins, and then you know it's very. I think it just spreads. Hopefully, is what you want. And then, I mean, I'm always still to this day. If someone buys my art, I'm very appreciative. Like that is a crazy thing that you're taking home to put on your wall. And people have stolen my art, and I mean, that's not a good thing, but I'm still like, you went through the trouble to steal my art. That's crazy. And like last year, it was a huge thing for me. Someone called me, and then they sent me a picture. They're like, I'm in Vancouver, Washington, and I'm in Goodwill, and your painting is for sale. And I was like, oh, that's so awesome that someone got rid of my painting. That's so cool, which is great. They probably just moved or something. But there was they're like, it's in a really nice frame. And I'm like, cool, is it, and it's just in the bins. They're like, no, they took a picture of it. They're like, it's up on the wall, and your name's on it, and they printed something off from the internet. Like, and there's like, and the price on it was more than I sold it for originally. And that's when I knew I had made it as an artist.
So do you have any thoughts on social media or the digital realm?
I mean, it's certainly a big part of how we both promote anymore.
MySpace. Yeah, it's great.
See, but back in the day when no galleries had websites, believe it or not, because I'm not a technophile, when the URLs were like this long, I met this guy and he said, you need to go on the internet. And so I had a site, and before any other gallery had sites, and now of course every business from the dry cleaners to whoever has a site. But we put out stuff on Facebook, Twitter, and my own gallery website, markwoolley.com, which it takes a lot of resources and time to do it well. And I've always had people in my gallery that were way better at it than me, that are way younger than me. But I finally took over my own Facebook when I realized that they were putting stuff out there. It's like my profile picture was some awful painting that I didn't even like. And I'm like, that's my profile picture. So I took my own site back over. I got a scanner. I know how to scan. I mean, you just have to learn how to do this kind of stuff.
You print cards though?
I still do.
Yeah.
I still do the art cards because you can get 2,000 cards for a couple $100, and some people still do like to get a card. It's a record of the show. They put it on their fridge. They give it to their friends. I still think the cards have a value, although a lot of galleries don't do cards anymore. But I'm kind of old school. I still like to read the newspaper. I miss the fact Newsweek doesn't publish an actual magazine anymore. I mean, the world is definitely changing, but so I kind of do all of that. You probably do more more social media. I don't even hardly know what MySpace is.
Well, I think it's gone now, but I think Facebook is pretty huge. It has been for a while. I mean, whatever you can promote yourself to do. I mean, that's the thing. Mark Twain, Edgar Allan Poe, they were self-promoters. Like artists are the same way. I mean, Mark Twain, everyone knew about Mark Twain because of Mark Twain. I mean, that's the way it started. And I think that your self-promotion, without being crazy and weird about it, I think is good. I think also, your social community, your network of people, that's really important. Being part of a group, volunteering. Like I volunteered, my first volunteership was I was a suit and tie guy, and I wanted to get in the art scene, so I volunteered at the Portland Arts Center, which is now gone. But I had no idea what I was getting into. It was like a super crazy installation gallery. Like they poured, 3 tons of sand on the floor and put a light bulb in the middle of it. I didn't understand it, but I grew to really respect that, and it really helped me for installation. But that's another chapter. I think the social media. My big thing is I partner with people. I have a lot of partners. I have a whole team of people and interns, and we have a team, which is how we get everything done. We have multiple Facebook pages and friends, and I'll give any artist a chance. So every person knows 5 people, right? So when you have an art show and you make a party, it's all ages, and you have free beer, and you have an engagement, but you make it about the art. I mean, it's super important to use that. And as things get quicker and faster, I have no idea to use, my phone's like my brain, I'm using 10% of it. I'm trying to, I mean, really.
I still have this size of a phone, but I'm getting a new one.
Right. I can send Mark like.
But I have 1,700 numbers on this phone.
Right, of course, yeah, it's way more than I have. Maybe not. But I can only send you like 3-word texts, right?
Oh,
So,
shut up. Mine are really long.
But social media, like Mark said, is true. Like we still print cards, but our cards are small. We don't really spend a lot of money. We have sponsors, and I try to use as many. We're artists, help us out. Like big business helps small business out. That's the way it works. I've operated as a nonprofit for 6 years, and I'm not a nonprofit. We all work together. I'm not. My gallery's not about making money. It's about exposing people to art. That's why we're in the mall. We're in the mall, which is a crazy place. Anyone in the world can walk into a mall. It's the weirdest thing in the world, but you can't get a better audience because they don't know it's a gallery. They just think it's like Spencer's or something. Does Spencer still exist? Or did I just date myself really bad? Yeah. I like people that walk around the gallery.
You're gonna have to tell everyone which mall you're in. Just make.
Oh yeah, we're in Pioneer Place Mall downtown. So
Top floor.
Yeah, top floor. But so what's interesting with this project is that their corporate office from the mall. This was the mall's idea to invite us in there, which is crazy. They had empty spaces. We're on the top floor, which used to be a toy store. And they said, "Do you want to be up there?" And I'm like, "There's no way I want to be in the mall. I am in Southeast Portland, and this is our scene." And he's like, "Well, it's we're not going to charge very much money to be here. So, and it's a nice space. It's an old toy store." And when he said it's an old toy store, I said yes, because that's awesome. And there used to be a full-size, life-size Han Solo frozen in carbonite in that toy store when I was a kid. So it was really cool to be up there. And Mark's space actually used to be the Pottery Barn, so it's kind of cool that this model is there. And we have a full glass front, and it's amazing to see the people that just walk in there. A woman came in today, she had like 3 Victoria's Secret bags. Like most galleries don't have that. Little kids run in, and it's, you have no idea who's going to walk in. The mall is, I think maybe like a gallery as, not really the perfect model for the way sales.
Well, and then the challenge is there are people that think downtown that there's no parking or whatever. So I've had clients that have found me, and I have other clients that haven't, and you just have to keep letting them know that you're there.
So what is your we only have a couple more questions. So what is your biggest business tip or lesson that you've learned over the years?
Well, I guess I talked about one lesson I learned the hard way, which was, more is not better. Do less things well rather than more things mediocre. So I think that's a big lesson I learned the hard way when I thought, I'll just open another gallery. And I think the other thing is just like Chris said, you just get up and you think, okay, how do I reach more people today? Who do I need to call today? And networking, I mean, I've done a lot of volunteer stuff. I've led a lot of groups use my gallery for nothing. And it always, there's something that comes back that's, I mean, obviously intrinsically, my gallery's always been really involved in some of the social service agencies for homeless youth. And I know Chris has done the same. I was on the board of directors. I was board president for Sisters of the Road Cafe in Old Town. And through that, I met that whole community that works in that field. So all the outside-in people. It just feels good to be able to have a space that's a beautiful space that you loan someone for a benefit or whatever. And a lot of those people come back, you know. So my advice is to, you know, be generous with your space and with your time. And you know, being a gallerist is kind of like being a combination psychotherapist. You know, there's artists that have problems and they look to you for guidance. I mean, I get calls from people I haven't seen in 10 years and they're like, I'm not doing well and you need to help me. And I'm like, okay, well, let's talk about it. I mean, it is like, yeah, working with artists is rewarding and it's also challenging at the same time. But if you don't like people, if you think you're going to make a lot of money doing a gallery, it's kind of like the people that think they're going to make a lot of money doing a restaurant, and it's really, really hard.
For sure. I think, I mean, Mark's, everything he said is totally correct. I think that being a good person and being nice to people is really important. I mean, I really enjoy what I do, and you gotta let that shine. You have to, I mean, I sell myself every day, but I'm selling something that's real. Like, what I do is totally from myself. I think that Mark is, I love people, I love dealing with people. It's really time consuming, but I mean, it's wonderful. It's a great, like, do I have an hour to talk to someone about this painting? Probably not, but you do it because it's really important. They're making an investment in you, which is always an interesting thing. I think also, I mean, never give up. Like I've said it before, you just keep going. I'm not really the best businessman all the time. I think I'm better at marketing than actual business. I don't charge very much commission for the art. I mean, I got two hats I'm wearing. As an artist, I'm a total art whore. Like, I will do anything. So I think that's been my biggest tip to people is, you know, not to be a whore, but I mean, maybe if you want to do that, that's fine. Like right here, this is one of the best-selling artists in the whole city right here. I don't know if anyone can see this, but so this is an IKEA frame, okay? And this is basically, she makes 6 paintings a year, right? And they're probably 16 by 20, and they're on paper. She then takes that and scans it, and then she makes postcards out of it that are high quality. So that's a framed postcard. So she sells that where I sell this for $35. So her name is Ursula Barton. So these are all Portland Ridge scenes, but they're very original. But she's capitalizing. I mean, it's marketing. She knows what she's doing. She loved watercolors. She loved making things. She found something. She found a niche, and she went crazy with it. So she probably sells over 100 of these just with me. She's in about 30 spots in Portland. So this is an easy thing to get. So this is a niche. You know, other people have their. I mean, every artist is different. That's what's great about our town. City of Portland told me that there's 14,000 last year. 14,000 active artists and musicians. So, I mean, between Mark and I, we work with a whole ton of those people, you know, and it's great. This
about half of them.
Yeah, there's about half of them. But, you know, I think the tip is find a hook. I mean, it's still business, it's still marketing, but keep yourself, you know, like, I could probably draw a bridge and sell it, but I didn't do that. I drew these, like, you know, these childish things, and I kept onto it, and I marketed myself for it. And I think people find that hook and be original, but find something people want. These sell really well too. These are just like, this is an English painter that lives in Portland, and these are prints on blocks of wood. They're $15. Like, people buy these all the time. People will come in and buy 20 of them, and they'll just make a little grid on their wall. Like, it's easy to carry. All this stuff that what's sold on Alberta, you know, is in our place. Like, this is a huge oil painting that she made that she then put into, you know, into a little print. So I think that those little things that you can make is important for your business.
the other thing is we collaborate on our openings. So all 3 galleries that are up there, we have third Saturday opening. So we're all cross-promoting the same event.
Sure.
So if you haven't been down to one of those, just look on your calendar the third Saturday. The next one's what, August 17th?
Like right now, we're running a show. My gallery is Carnival, and Mark's gallery is Carnival. So, that's a little promotion that we're doing together. I think that's, and as his biggest tip right now, he is marketing right as we sit here, which is really important.
Great.
Yeah.
So just the last question, do you have any final tips or thoughts? And then we'll take a few questions from the audience.
Tips. I think part of curating shows is sometimes you really do have to get out of town. Like you have to, it really helps to go, just get out of town, see what's happening in Seattle, or try to, when I was doing my pop-up shows, I was able to travel more than I had in many, many years. And because the artists with almost no money would come back and say, oh, I went to, I saw this great show at MoMA or whatever. And I was like, I hadn't been to New York in 10 years. So I went back. So as far as being a curator, I think you need to be out in the community, and you also need to get out of town. So that's one little tip.
That's your final tip?
I don't know. That doesn't sound very important.
No, that sounds good. Gosh, there's so much. I think right now, that a lot of art is kind of focused upon, I think the big trend in Portland, like when the recession happened, was to make art small and affordable. So I think that's kind of where it is. And Crafty Wonderland was awesome. Like we have all these things. Like I'm so impressed that Milwaukie has this. This is not what was here when I was in Milwaukie. This was not an art place. Vic's Tavern, which was as arty as Milwaukie was then, which is a great place. I miss that place. But I have a mural now at Milwaukie High School, which is so super crazy to see. I would never, and I was at the unveiling thing, and I'm like, hey, I barely graduated from here, but I don't know here, so I make art. I think my biggest tip is, I speak at PNCA every year about, it's hard. Art school, they don't teach you how to sell art. They do not teach you how to put a wire on a painting. They don't teach you how to anything. We take in new artists. People will come to my gallery and, hey, I want to be in a show, and so they will be in a show. You need that. You need that entrance. I want it to be the gallery that people can put on their resume. You need that on your resume. I want to show in a bar so I can show in a gallery. It's a weird world we live in, but I think that, I just tell people don't stop. Keep going. Do not stop doing it. If you really love it, don't stop doing it. I watch, there's 4 movies a year I watch if I ever get into a slump. Because I wake up in the morning and I do. You just have to keep doing it until, failure is not an option. You chose to be an artist. It's like being a poet or a musician or any of the above art things. They're all hard. This is not an easy thing to do, but it's really fun. And I think that's why people love to do it. And it's the most personal thing you can do. Creating art, writing a song, it's all amazing part that we're all tapping into. But that world doesn't need to be so elite. It's good to share it with everyone else and really network. I think network and friends and your family and, the little communities that are created. We're in Milwaukie, Oregon, that's so close to Portland. And Portland is in a total renaissance, and it has been for a long time. This is great that, we're 6 miles away, right? 8 miles? How far are we?
Woolley border.
What's that?
Woolley border.
Yeah, this is, anyway.
I guess we haven't really talked about, I don't know how many artists are here, but,
You're an artist, right? Yeah.
So a lot. Well, just as a dealer, my few tips for approaching a gallery and successfully would be try to have a cohesive body of work. I get submissions from people that there's a few landscapes and there's some portraits and there's this and that, and it's most galleries that are thinking about a show, there needs to be some sort of overarching theme, concept, focus, I guess is a good word. Is you don't have to show the galleries every single thing that you've done or that you have. One show might be appropriate for one gallery and another kind of work might be appropriate for another gallery. So research the galleries that you're submitting to.
But no one teaches you to do that either.
Right.
There's no teaching to submit to something. It's not.
Because if you're submitting, chainsaw art to my gallery, you don't know my gallery. You don't know what I show. You don't know, you have to be informed about who you're approaching and what kind of art they're showing. I would say also don't skimp on documenting your work. Like get a decent photographer if you're not a good one. Even with all the digital stuff out there, there are professional photographers that come in and can come in and shoot all of your work, and that $200 or whatever it might cost you, I would say is very well worth it. So I would say, documenting your work, doing your research on the gallery, having a cohesive focus for a potential show, and then just staying in touch. Just sometimes the squeaky wheel, like somebody, maybe they call me back because I don't get back to them, and that's okay. So don't be afraid to follow up. But there's inappropriate ways to approach galleries. Like when I'm there for an opening for somebody else's show, it's not the time for someone to come and talk to me about their work. But people do that all the time.
Yeah.
So
like people bring physical work into the gallery too, which I don't really love, and then like spread it out on the floor and not even look at it. And we live in the time of email. Email is the most professional way to do things, especially always have a record of it.
You want
Anybody?
questions?
Any questions? It's gotta be one.
Teresa.
Anyone else?
What is your favorite artist in Portland? Or somebody that maybe, like visual, or someone, a poet that has inspired you, or
Wow.
said something?
Wow, I love all artists. Go ahead, Mark.
So the question is, who's our favorite artist in Portland? Or,
Yeah, I would say Portland. Let's go with Portland.
it's a really tough question. There's an artist that I showed for a while. He's now showing at a different gallery. It's kind of an amazing guy. You may have heard of him, Tom Kramer. He did some amazing murals around town.
He did a bunch of cars too.
He's showing at Laura Rousseau Gallery right now. He's used to show at Butters Gallery. He showed at William Duffenbaugh Gallery, which is now closed. He did 2 big shows with me when I had 2 galleries. He's just someone who has figured out how to live as an artist without, he doesn't teach. He taught once in a while, but he lives, he bought his house over in Northeast back in the day when you could buy a house over there for something like $16,000, and he burns scraps of wood in his potbelly stove, but he just, he figured out how to live as an artist, and he reminds me of Chris in some ways in terms of, he has an amazing work ethic, and he will get up, he looks at it as his profession, and he gets up and he has a practice of doing art, pretty much every single day. So look, do a Google on Tom Kramer. He's painted cars, he did sets for the ballet, and he grew up his mother's still living. She lives at Terwilliger Plaza. She's on their TV commercials. She was a piano teacher, and he grew up in an artistic family. And anyway, so Tom Kramer, I respect his work ethic, and we didn't always get along. He's a really intense guy. And if you look at his work, you can see that he's definitely obsessive compulsive. But, he figured out a way to deal with his obsessive compulsion through his art. And so, I don't know, that would be one person. But there's so many. That's a really
I do have a hard question. It has to do with Tom Kramer. Tom Kramer's totally amazing. I think Tom Kramer is one of the reasons that in the 80s, Tom Kramer was really known he was the younger generation, and he was pulling back to the older generation and working with older artists. I think that really had a huge effect on me, for the fact that artists, I think, some guy said, I can't remember this, he said that artists are a special class of people because they can move within the caste system of society, which is amazing, because it's totally true. The poorest artists in the world can be at a rich party and be the center of attention, because they have a special talent, which is great. But Tom Kramer totally went to an older generation in Oregon, which is, give him a giant Wikipedia page for that, and I really respect Tom for that. But in 2006, I think 2005, when I was in Olympic Mills, I started doing murals and stuff in Portland, which is another great thing. If you've never done a mural, do a mural. It's super fun. I did a show called the Portland Mural Show, and I had muralists show art inside of this art space, which never happens because they paint murals. Like they get the recognition of their mural, but they don't all hang out. And I got to work with Joe Cotter, who did all the McMenamin's murals, and he was so famous in Estacada. All the murals in Estacada are Joe Cotter. He passed away last year, but he's the reason why the mural code changed in Portland. So got to work with him. Got to work with Charlotte Perkins, who was part of the Black Panthers. She was in the show, but she wasn't alive. Her entire family came, and they showed these quilts that she made and these murals. And anyway, so we did a big live paint. It was like 95 degrees, and everyone's painting outside, and we have this big bay doors open, and we had punk bands play, which is crazy because there's all these like really impressive people that are in the show. But I had Tom Kramer painting live on one side, and the artist I'm talking about, I had him paint on the other side. And Tom was, they've both been painting in Portland the same amount of time. His name is Extremo the Clown, and he is Portland's most avid window painter. He's the fastest painter I've ever seen, and he is a big Chicago artist. And he was invited to the Betty Page Annual 2 years ago, and he was their #1 artist. His name is Scott Campbell. You'll see him, he dresses as a clown, and he has those giant art cars in Portland that has like a waterfall in it. and he'll have music blaring and like some crazy animal, like puppet screaming. But he's a super nice guy. He's got tons of kids. He doesn't drink. He's totally nice. But when he takes his artist persona, he, totally becomes this character of the Extreme Leather Clown. But he's been on lots of magazine covers. He loves Portland. He just has a lot of fun in what he's doing. He doesn't charge very much money for what he's doing, and he's just, he paints Timberline Dodge, and paints Burgerville and everything. That's what he wants to do.
Mike's driving.
He does, but Mike's driving. Yeah, he's all over the place. The guy has no limits to what he can do, and he's the fastest painter I've ever seen. I've never seen anyone paint as fast as he does. But, there's another niche. Like, he became the window painter in Portland, There's a guy that paints himself silver. He's an artist, too. There's stands in front of the mall. We have these niches. I love art. I think it's rad to be an artist, so I think everyone should make stuff. Any other questions at all?
I don't have a question, but I do want to just do a shout out. I know you both are Mustangs, both grads of Milwaukie High School, and I just want to say thank you. I know you've both been very supportive of Michael Rawls and the high school.
Sure.
And Chris, I just want to tell you, your mural is spectacular.
Thank you very
You should
much.
be so proud.
Thanks.
One of your legacies. It is really.
Thanks.
Really.
Appreciate it.
We're going to show it to me tonight, right?
I don't think we can get in there.
Oh, it's
It's the mural that no one can see.
There are photos of his fabulous mural on the artMOB website, which is www.artmob.net. You can see them on there.
Where is it at the school?
It's inside. So the old shop, if y'all know Milwaukie High School, there used to be a shop near the old condo pit, is what we called it. Because when I went to high school, you could smoke at Milwaukie High School. And they were the condo pits. No, we could.
Yeah.
It was called the condo pit, which is like it's a term from your era, I think. But
Never heard of it.
so anyway, they turned the shop into, which is amazing. I think the administration of Milwaukie High School is totally great right now. I heard a quote from Coach Buckles, who worked there forever. He said, "I like teaching in Milwaukie High School because I've almost been fired, but then they have a new principal every 2 years." But now that's not the case because everyone's really great there. I think when they invited me, I was honored to be there, and it's just been a great thing to work with everyone there. But anyway, the shop is now a health center, and I just got a call from OHSU. I'm going to have a show at HSU, and they were talking about the health center in Milwaukee, which is great. And basically, the students have health care in their high school. They have a dentist, there's blood work, like everything is done there, and I painted a mural in the lobby of the place, which you have to get a student pass to, because, it's high school, it has to be secure, so to see the mural. But anyway, it's there. My dad was with me. My dad graduated from Woolley High School when we put it in. My dad helped me install the mural, and it goes around. It goes against a wall, and then it goes around, and then it goes around another wall. So it's kind of a crazy thing, but it's all maroon and gold. So, yay.
How about one more question, one last question? Anyone?
Just one question, anything. Sure.
Is it better to sell a million paintings for $40 or a few for $400?
Why don't we repeat the question? So
What's that?
So the question was, is it better to sell how many for
I don't know.
400 for a
I
million?
guess how do you price your work in that aspect? I know
Yeah.
Chris cranks out tons of paintings and sells them.
Or fewer works for a
And
higher
I know
price?
like in your gallery, you've got stuff that's like hundreds or thousands sometimes, right? I mean, more expensive.
A range. So part of the question is how you price work. My advice for pricing out a show is to have a range. In other words, you can go into a Gregory Brennan show. He's a very accomplished artist in town at Laura Rousseau, who's a friend of mine. His large paintings are 20, 30 grand. I've never sold work in that price.
What's the most expensive painting you've ever sold?
Probably the most expensive painting I've ever sold is maybe 10 grand. And that wasn't very often. I happened to start working with a woman whose late husband was a fairly well-known New York painter, and that's just the price point of his oils, and I sold one. So that's not normal for my gallery. I would say in my gallery, the work would be priced from say $250 to, depending on the artist and the size of the work, you know, maybe five grand or whatever. But most of the work I would sell, I would say would be, there's price points. So under $1,000, under 500 is good, under 1,000 is good, under 2,000 is good. In this town, when you get up into more than, you know, 2 grand, it's just harder to do. Not that you can't.
Yeah.
There's paintings at Elizabeth Leach Gallery that, when she opened her big new gallery in the Pearl, that were, you know, $800,000, but she's operates on a different sphere. She's got more resources. She's in art fairs. Her father was the ambassador to France. I mean, those things help. But,
yeah, for sure.
So my advice is to have a range, so that maybe, so what Gregory Grennan does, he's got these paintings for 20, 30 grand, but to get a beginning collector, he does woodcuts that are maybe $250. And I think that's really smart for him to do that, because maybe the next time somebody will buy one of his little paintings for $800, and then, so I think having an entry point that is excessively priced is a really smart thing to do. Tom Kramer does the same thing.
Yeah.
He does little totems for $100, and then he has his large intricately carved panels for 10 grand, and everything in between. So I think that's smart.
Honestly, I've always, since I started doing this, I was like, well, I'm going to pay myself $20 an hour. So that's basically what I've done. I mean, this took me this long to make, so this is what I do. I look for cheap materials, I look for something that's lasting. I paint on wood. You know, I have to make canvas. Time and money. And it's all a balance of how you make things. I think prints are a neat thing for people to make. You retain your original that's still expensive, but then you can make this other thing. And it all depends on what you really want to do. If you're not a painter, if you're not, you know, there's so many different forms of art. Some things are way more expensive than others. Like, you know, I'm using recycled material versus oil. You know, I was just trying to make art really accessible. You know, but I totally understand, and I've sold a piece of art, you know, equivalent to what Mark is saying too. I've sold other people's art for that. I've been paid. Most I've been paid for one painting was $5,000, but it was huge, and the buyer actually raised the price because they felt that I was underpriced. So that was White and Kennedy. So thank you for buying that painting, because that was a good deal for me. But you know, most of the cases it's not that way. Like $100 painting, that's a perfect market for me right there, because you know you sell enough of those, you have $1,000. So I mean, that's kind of how I think.
All right, thank you so much. Don't forget there's an artMOB email sign up on the back. And of course, Chris's work is for sale, and they would love to talk to you and tell you more about their stuff. So
Yeah, and all this is all from Portland, by the way, all this art. I just brought it so you can see what's going on.
And we would love to see you at our next third Saturday. It really is fun.
Yeah, I actually,
5 to 9, and beverages.
yeah, what's your show? My show is, this is our biggest, one of our biggest shows of the year. We have an artist named Chuck Sperry, who is, he's a San Francisco artist, and he loves Portland. He did a ton of stuff for Calvin Klein. He's considered the best hair artist in the world. And he was a graffiti guy, like not graffiti, but he's a big Berkeley poster guy. He did all these rock posters, and all the original art for Jimi Hendrix was done by this guy. And his big, huge thing is that last year in Buenos Aires, there was a world design conference, and there was 3 Americans were invited to it, and Chuck Sperry was one of them. So, and Brazil put out a book for him, and anyway, he's doing a big show at our gallery.
So my show, I was just in his studio like a half an hour before this started. His name is Alex Lilly. He's very shy guy, but he's an amazing painter. Do you know Alex? Some of his large canvases are literally 18 feet wide by about 6 feet. And way more than will fit. I mean, my gallery's a big size gallery. It's at, 300 square feet. But I was just in his studio, and so he'll have at least one of those big paintings and some smaller work. So Alex Lilly is, I'm just really excited about the show, and he kind of follows world trouble spots. So anytime there are flames that show up in the media, whether it's Gaza or a bus blowing up in, you know, Iraq or whatever, he does these oils, and it sounds gruesome, but they're beautiful because he focuses on the flames, and they're these flame paintings that are just kind of amazing. And then you realize where they were, and you remember hearing about that terrorist event or that explosion or whatever. But he makes them. It's sort of like terrible beauty, like that book about Ireland. I mean, there can be beauty in even the most horrific circumstances. So it's a really compelling show. So I hope you can come.
Sounds good. Thank you everyone for being here, by the way. It's amazing. It's really great. Thank you.
And I brought my business cards with my little picture from Hector Campbell's school when I was 10 years old. So